Two definitions. One is from IFAS for the best management practices, and one from FDAX, Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They're pretty much same, but in some wording is different. So the IFAS recommendation is the BMPs are practical measures that the producers can adopt to reduce the fertilizer, pesticide, and animal waste pollutants that could enter into the water bodies. And it also improves the water use efficiency and nutrient use efficiencies. This is IFAS definition. The FDAX definition is it's basically more technical, defined by the law, and that is a practice. It's a combination of practices. The BMP is a combination of practices that determined and coordinating agencies based on the research and field testing. And after the review, those most effective and practical practices are being followed that could improve the water quality in Florida. So FDAC's definition is a little more technical, and IFAS is more generic because there's a series of BMPs, best management practices that you use in agriculture, but some of them that adopted by FDACs are actually governed by the law.
For nutrient management, we have determined, we being IFAS has determined for more than 30 years now, the amount of nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and others that are required to produce each crop. You know, each crop is slightly different. And so we've come up with a number of recommendations for these various crops that they should be applying so much fertilizer in a given production period. Those recommendations were never intended to be regulatory in any way. It was just a recommendation that this is what a crop would need to produce a good and viable product. Now, since the mid to late 1990s, that's when BMPs came in, and BMPs the BMP program by the Department of Agriculture uses our recommendation as a starting point, as a basis. So they have encouraged growers to use our recommendations, and many growers were quite a bit above our recommendations initially, 20, 30 years ago. We've done a lot of on-farm studies with them. We've worked with them to reduce the amount of fertilizer they're adding, just straight reduction in fertilizer without greatly affecting their yields. And so the amount of fertilizer that producers are applying have decreased substantially over the last 20 or 30 years. So that's a huge improvement. And that's allowed them to produce the level of product that they want to produce, depending on what crop they're growing. And we feel that the environment has benefited from that. Now, there are other practices that IFAS is looking at as well, and that's things like irrigation management. On our sandy soils, fertilizers leach very readily. And so, you could apply a lot of fertilizer, and if you apply too much water, it's going to leach the fertilizer away from the roots of the crop, and then the crop doesn't benefit from the fertilizer, but it goes to the environment. So we've done a lot of work over that same period of time to encourage the growers to use irrigation more wisely and use it appropriately, splitting the fertilizer application. You can take the same amount of fertilizer, but apply it in several small doses rather than all at one time. And that will improve the efficiency of the fertilizer. And that's really what we key in on, we in IFAS key in on, is making improvements in nutrient uptake and use efficiency. That way, they can reduce the amount of fertilizer they're applying, and they also reduce the amount that's going into the environment.
The best management practices is not just helping improving the water quality, but it also helps growers to improve their income. So I'm saying when I'm saying income, I'm referring to not producing the maximum yield, but producing the maximum economic yield. So it's basically producing every bushel of corn per every pound of nitrogen applied. So if your cost of nitrogen is more than you are then you're getting in terms of yield, then obviously that's the point where the farmers probably need to stop applying fertilizer because it's not improving its yield that much that it can get any benefit. So our goal of BMP is helping growers improving incomes if they understand that concept in terms of uh, um, yield. So our goal is not a maximum yield, but economical yield. But at the same time, that economical yield improves uh, um, fertilizer use efficiency, and it also reduces the nutrient losses to the environmental side. There is a law, we call it Senta Bill 712, which is basically regulating all the fertilizers in Florida. And that means everything, this law states that the UFIFS recommendation would be a regulatory number that the growers need to follow while they're applying the fertilizer rate. So for example, how you can compare with the neighboring state is that in neighboring state, a farmer can apply whatever the farmer thinks is the best for his farm. But in Florida, the farmer has to follow the recommendations from what's coming from UFIFS. But there's a glitch in the story that these recommendations are older, and these recommendations were never built in the thought process. They will be used as a regulatory number, but now the IFS is working very hard, and I'm pressing, and that's why I said very hard is that researchers and extension personnel all across the state are working on nutrient management to update those nutrient recommendations to help growers to follow the updated rates.
That would like to just shut agriculture down because they see agriculture being a polluter to the water quality, and in Florida, water quality is very important both to our recreational industries, our tourism, and just our drinking water. It's the quality is very important. And so there are quite a few groups that would like to just shut agriculture down altogether, and they think by doing so, well, then they eliminate the pollution problem. Well, there are other sources of pollution that need to be managed as well, and that's DEP's, the Department of Environmental Protection. That's their emphasis, is to work with these other industries and reduce pollution there. So getting rid of agriculture isn't an answer. Where would we get our food? Well, we would just be transferring the problem of fertilizers to another area that may also have a pollution problem. And in Florida, our big well, at least in South Florida, our big concern is phosphorus. We've had a lot of blue-green algae blooms, and we've had red tide and things that are associated with phosphorus. But a lot of that phosphorus is phosphorus that was applied, 50 or more years ago. That's just now getting into the system. So it's going to be some time before the benefits of what we're doing now are truly realized.
The growers think that these BMPs are not economically beneficial, and that is the biggest roadblock for them not adopting it, if some of them are not adopting it. And 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 basically they only see a one BMP as a number. For example, if they are following the IFRS recommendation number, that it reduces their farm income economics. I would, I'm talking in terms of economics. But BMP is a combination of practices. It's not just one number followed by a grower, and the rest of it, whatever that grower is doing, would work. So it's a series of practices that you follow, and then once you follow those practices, it will eventually let you a maximum economic return. But what now we are seeing that the growers' perspective is to just follow the number, and that number doesn't work with our system. So, and that could be true because that number has an attachment to a series of the combination of practices that need to be followed along with that fertilizer number to produces maximum economic yield.
Some people have expectations that aren't realistic. They would like to see that, okay, say in a five-year period, we can reduce the amount of fertilizer that growers are applying. We have them apply it in different ways, and then all of a sudden our water quality is not a problem anymore. That's not going to happen, because we've been applying nutrients in Florida for 150 years, and a lot of those nutrients that were applied 50 to 100 years ago are still in the system. Lake Okeechobee has a huge amount of phosphorus that has accumulated in the lake over that period of time, 50 years or more. We have to deal with that, and that's going to take some time.